buyers usually don't call us looking for an agent. They usually call us because they're interested in a property. So if you got a listing, they're usually reaching out to you because they want information on your listing. And there's a possibility that now you could represent both parties in the transaction and get both sides of the commission. That's dual agency. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be you, though.
Okay.
Remember that explanation I said. Dual agency could be that it's your listing and a buyer contacted you, and now you are personally working with both parties. But dual agency could also be when another agent in your office has the listing. So it's a company listing, and you have the buyer that's interested in that property. Well, your agency, you're both under the same roof, right? So the company is representing both parties in the transaction. That's dual agency too. So it doesn't have to be only when you personally are working with both the seller and the buyer. It could be that another agent in your office is working with the seller and you're working with the buyer for the same property. It's still dual agency because your agency is representing both parties in the transaction. You follow?
No, I got that part. The thing is that it seems somehow a little complicated, because you protecting both persons, so and you right in the middle. And if something comes out, even if it doesn't come out from you, the other person heard something, but the client gonna believe that you say something, so it's a little bit tricky.
So it basically is we got to treat both parties fairly and honestly in the transaction, and we can't put one party's interest above the other. If we're only representing one of them in the transaction, it's a lot easier to understand. If we find out something about the other side, we have a duty and obligation to go disclose it back to our client. But there's really no situation where we would find out something unless the other agent said something that they weren't supposed to begin with. Because they're supposed to keep confidential anything their clients told them in confidence, other than problems with the property, which they're required to disclose. Sellers and their agents are required to disclose known problems. You're not allowed to hide those things. Okay. You could get sued for that. The owner or homeowner of the property could get sued if they don't disclose known issues or problems. It's not a matter of trying to sell somebody a banged up used car that is about to break down, and you put thicker oil in it so the engine lasts a little bit longer, and doesn't make the knocking noises. Okay, you can't do that with a house. Okay, when you're selling real estate, you have to disclose any problems that you're aware of so that other party comes into it fully well understanding what's going on here in the transaction, and they either buy it or they don't. Like every property comes with its own issues. It's just as long as those issues are known to all parties, so that we're dealing fairly and honestly with each other here, and then everybody can make an informed decision. That's the whole idea behind the real estate. And us working as real estate agents, the way to be a good agent, to be a great agent, is to educate your clients. That's it. Your job is just to teach them about the real estate process, explain to them what this is or what that is, explain to them what the next step is. The more informative you are, the same things that I'm teaching you now, you teach your clients. Okay. And then after a while, you'll know this stuff just like I do, doing it over and over again. But informing your clients and teaching and educating your clients is what makes you a good agent. Some agents, they don't do that. What they'll do is they'll just stick papers in your face, say, sign here, sign there, and that's it. Oh, what was that I just signed? It's a disclosure. You have to explain, educate your clients, why you're having them sign documents. It'll also show how you're doing more to protect them and look out for their interests, But as far as this dual agency stuff goes, you're either working for one party or the other or both. And if you're working for both, you can't put one party's interest above the other. If they tell you something in confidence, you cannot disclose it unless you get the approval from the other. All right. But there's really not any situation where I would want to disclose something that somebody told me in confidence anyway. You know, the only time it really becomes a little bit of an issue is when it comes to making the offer, because we can't encourage them how much of an offer to make, because we may know that even though we listed the property at a certain price, the seller may be willing to accept less. And if that's the case, we can't let the cat out of the bag and let the buyer know how much. So we have to just ask them to make their highest and best offer, you know, and we still can prepare for them a CMA, a comparative market analysis, which basically tells them how much these homes are going for in the neighborhood and how much they're worth. And then based on that, how much do you want to offer? Okay, that's basically the best way to do it when you're representing both parties in the transaction, or your company is. Okay, that's it.
Victor, I have a question.
Yeah.
The acronym that you gave earlier, COALD, what was that again?
Oh, COLD. Yeah. COLD, COALD. This is something in chapter 3 we're actually going to go over. It's your fiduciary duty. It's COLD. Care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. These fiduciary duties are the legal responsibilities that we owe to our clients. A client is somebody who we're working with as their agent, a buyer's agent, seller's agent, or a disclosed dual agent, but not as a transaction broker. Because as a transaction broker, you're not representing them. You're just acting as a neutral manager of the transaction. You do the same things that an agent does, but you don't owe legal responsibilities to them. So if you don't do something, they can't sue you. Okay, that's wherein lies the difference. Now, what makes a difference of how you're representing somebody? Which box you check. That's it. Don't overthink it. It really is simple. Just don't overthink it. It is that simple. You know, it's which box am I representing? The seller only, the buyer only, or both, or none of them. Okay, and then if I'm representing them as an agent, what are my legal responsibilities I have to them? COLD, care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. And in chapter 3, we're going to go over each one of those in detail to learn what each one of them means. Okay?
Thank you.
Victor,
Yes, sir.
I had a question about the difference between not the difference between, but can a transaction broker and a full service broker can be the same, or by law they have to be separate? You mentioned you set up a separate brokerage agency.
I could have one client, I check off a box and I'm working as a transaction broker for them. Another one, I check off a different box and I'm working a different way for them. It's all about the box that you check. What I said, I gave an example there of, in my opinion, where I think that it makes sense to work as a transaction broker. Because in most cases, it doesn't make any sense. If you're representing somebody, it doesn't make any sense to work as a transaction broker unless you just don't want to have any responsibility or liability for anything, you know. But I represent my clients. I always look out for my clients' interest.
No, that I understood. My question was, a full service brokerage company or any real estate broker company you walk in,
Yeah,
they could act as a transaction broker if they agree to do it for you. There's no real estate commission doesn't prohibit them. It's not like you have to have a segregation.
real estate commission has nothing to do with it. Yep. Yeah. This is just the box that you check off and how you're deciding how you're going to be representing them. Now, your office may have a policy that they don't represent anybody. They always work as a transaction broker. I know one particular, it's not just a brokerage. I think most of the agencies in a franchise actually work that way. You know, I don't like that model. I represent my clients. I like to look out for their interest, and I tell them, and I make sure I make it a point that they understand the difference. That there are some agents out there that work as transaction brokers. They don't represent you at all, and something that you tell them in confidence, they could go blab it to the other side. So you better watch what you say. But this is how I am representing you. So here on this form, I'm going to check off, I'm going to work with you as a buyer's agent and disclose dual agent if the opportunity arises, because I represent my clients. Okay, so just sign here to acknowledge that I've given this to you and that I've explained to you how it works. Boom, that's it. It's as simple as that. I gave a long explanation to teach you guys all the details, the ins and outs of the different types of agency and the forms that we need to get the clients to sign and what the purpose is, you know. But for your clients, when you're giving them these forms, you know, just say, listen, a company, an agent working for a real estate company, they could represent you as a buyer's agent only, seller's agent only, or disclosed dual agent representing both parties in the transaction, because it'd be illegal for a company to represent both parties in the transaction without disclosing it to you that they're representing both parties in the transaction, and not only disclosing it, but getting your permission to work in that way. And then if I work in that way, now I need to get you to sign a informed consent to dual agency that you agree to that.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, before today, has anybody ever heard of the different types of agencies? Most people never even heard of these. You know, you go to a real estate agent, you figure that they're representing your interest, right?
Right.
I'm here now educating you, my clients, letting you know that there's different ways that agents can work with you. They should be going over this, but a lot of agents, they just check a box and say, here, sign here. Okay, before I can show you property, you got to sign here, you know, and they really don't go over it, but they should. They should. They're supposed to. The law requires them to. So, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm just making sure you fully understand, you know, I want them to see that I'm educating them and I'm doing something that agents are supposed to do. Okay. So I kind of point it out in a way that I'm not seeming braggadocious about it, but I'm pointing out the fact that I am taking the effort and I'm here for you. Because if you don't do it, it goes over their head and they don't even respect what you're doing. Oh, my agent stuck a bunch of papers in my face. How many people you know that worked with a real estate agent before and you asked them their experience? Did they sign this form with you? Oh, I don't know. They put all kinds of papers in my face.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
Very
you
true.
know, but if you actually explained it and took the time, they'll be, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that, because they took the effort and they spent the time there. A couple of
You
minutes.
also lose customer like that. You lose clients because when I was buying my house,
Mhm.
I didn't like the first person that I was working on because she just wanted was so rude, just sign this here, sign this there. And when I have something that you are looking for, I just call you. So she didn't sit down, she didn't explain anything. And I told my husband, you know, we're not doing business with this lady.
She didn't invest
And
a lot of time in you. Yeah.
so, and then we change, and then we find another guy, and he literally sit down with every single paper, bunch of paper that you're showing here. I'm
Mhm.
aware of them because when I was buying a house, I saw it. So
Good.
because he took the time and he explained it, and if in the future I'm going to buy another house, I'm going to look for. Well, now I'm going to look for I'm going to do it myself, but
So
you know,
you guys see this, how she's explaining it, how she appreciated that. She remembered it, she appreciated that, and she selected an agent. She got rid of another agent because they didn't. It does make a difference. That's my whole point here. It does make a difference. So just, I mean, these things are not difficult to explain. It's just a matter of being able to speak to people. I know in today's internet age where we don't speak to people's faces, instead we just type crap online and talk junk anonymously to people, not to their faces. It's difficult to have a conversation with somebody. But if you could be a good communicator and you have no problem speaking to somebody, and sometimes people actually come off when you have conversations. Sometimes they could come off a little aggressive towards you too. If you're not reactionary, you just absorb what they're saying, understand it, and then reply to it without barking back and getting into arguments with people. You'll be a good agent. This is how you communicate with each other. This is how humans throughout history have. We're losing the art of communication with the technology, you know, unfortunately. And this is the way that we can. If you could do this stuff in real estate, you'll be good. You'll be good because you got to meet with people still. You're not selling anything online. They could see all the virtual tours they want online. You could come up with any kind of AI robot, fake person to talk to you and answer questions. It's not the same. It's not the same. They're not going to be buying from them. They're not meeting with that robot. You're not signing contracts sight unseen only from a video you've seen online. Especially now with right now with these AI tools, you could ask some of them to show you a virtual tour of a house that doesn't even exist. And create a house. So that the legal lawmakers, they should be addressing these issues now before they become scams that are a major issue later on. I mean, in the past, we already had issues with people that try to scam people by, you have a rental property, you put an ad on Craigslist or some other forum or something about it. And you got scammers out there that they steal your pictures, your write-up. They don't even remove your information from your contact number, and they put their own number and information up top over there. So it's hit or miss whether they call you or they call the person who reposted the ad, acting as the owner, trying to get a deposit for a house that they may know is vacant. They go and they break in there, they change the locks, they let you in, they show you the property, you give them a deposit, and they say, okay, well, they'll prepare a lease and send it to you. Here's the keys, and then you never see them again. They got your money. Stuff like this happens all the time. And it's only going to get worse as technology gets crazier like this. But communication is key. All right, let's move along. Any other questions about the CIS form? Or disclosed dual agency agreements, or when you would be considered a dual agent? Okay. I just want to make sure everybody's good and clear. If you ever got any questions, feel free to ask. All right. Guess what time it is? It's lunch. So continuing with the chapter 2 here, if a property is available for you or any other agent in your office to show, it must be available for agents from other offices to show as well. All right. If you get a listing and it's available for you to show or anybody in your office to show, it must be available for other agents to show as well from other companies as well. The only exception is when the seller tells you not to cooperate with other brokers, because this is how we cooperate with each other. We share our listing inventory with agents from other brokerages. It helps us sell homes quicker and at a higher price than would be the case where we were not to cooperate with other brokers. So the only instance where we don't do this is where the seller tells us they don't want us to, and then we need to get them to sign a cover your booty form called the Waiver of Broker Cooperation. That basically is a form that the owner confirms that they told us not to cooperate with other brokers, because otherwise licensing law requires us to. So we call those pocket listings. So we're not allowed to have these secret pocket listings unless the owner directs you not to cooperate with other brokers, and then we get them to sign the Waiver of Broker Cooperation Agreement. You should never introduce that form to an owner. It should only be upon their request when they request it. So this would include delayed showings for any reason. If it's not available for other agencies to show, that means that you and agents in your office can't show it either. So if there's delayed showings because they want to do repairs or painting or something, if it's not available for any other agent to show, you can't show it either. Okay. That includes when you're doing these delayed showings for this new coming soon listing nonsense that we see a lot of, that came about with all the HGTV, Bravo TV programs on real estate. They do these trying to build excitement. They say coming soon listing. Well, can you advertise a property if you don't have a listing? No, you can't. So you have a listing. It's just with a coming soon listing. It's not coming soon. You have the listing. It's just a delayed showing. They signed a delay showing form. Written offers have to be forwarded to the owner within 24 hours. And anytime we get a listing, we have to put it into the MLS within 48 hours. That's that computer system that we share these listing inventory with each other. Now, there's more than one MLS in New Jersey. There's many MLSs. But whatever one you're a member of, you enter that in. Unless the owner directs you not to, and then you sign that, you have them sign that waiver of broker cooperation agreement form. There's a sample of that on page 18 and 19. And this is it right here down at the bottom. This is on page 18 at the bottom. I want you to write here, listings must be entered into the MLS within 48 hours unless the seller directs a broker not to cooperate. The seller then must sign the waiver of broker cooperation form. And this is the actual form beneath it that they printed here on the page. Doesn't look like a form because it's just part of the page here. So I just put a little box around it for the remainder of this page, and it carries on for half of the next page as well. So let's just do these highlights and put a highlighted box around that. And then I'll just, I prefer using a different older form that the Middlesex County MLS used to use. They're now called the Central Jersey MLS. They tried to rebrand themselves so that they could get a wider market share. I guess sometime in the future, it'll build up eventually, maybe. So that Middlesex County MLS is now called the Central Jersey MLS. And I like the waiver of broker cooperation form that they had. I still use that today. So once you guys got this, I will turn the slide.
One sec.
So who owns this MLS systems? I mean, you mentioned there are multiple. I didn't realize there are multiple systems across New Jersey.
Yeah. We got about 8 different MLSs. I'll go over them.
Okay, great.
Okay, everybody good?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, good.
So that waiver of broker cooperation agreement, we got to know about this form. You'll get questions about it on exam. So licensing law, now here's my explanation of it on my slide here that I created for you with my wording. Licensing law requires all agents to share their listing inventory with other agencies. If a listing is available for you or any other agent in your office to show, it has to be available for agents from other agencies to show as well. Every listing has to be entered into the MLS within 48 hours unless the owner directs us not to. That could be a question in itself. Who could direct you not to? How soon do you got to put the listings in the MLS? That could be a question. And when you don't, what's the document, the form that the owners need to sign? The waiver of broker cooperation. That gives us authorization not, or instructions not to cooperate with other brokers. And so this has to be signed by the owner at the time we get the listing. And if the other agent requests it, then we have to supply it to them, that form that was signed by the owner when we got the listing. We should never introduce this form or the idea about not cooperating with other brokers to our clients ever. Sometimes an agent may want to do that if they're trying to get their own secret pocket listing so they get both ends of the deal, you know, but that's not treating everybody fairly equally, honestly. And it's not going to get your client the most money or sell it the quickest either. Let's see, what did this lady do? This is a little bit opposite of what you would normally expect. Somebody would sign a waiver of broker cooperation and or not sign the waiver of broker cooperation and just not put it in the MLS. This lady actually did the opposite. She actually had her client sign a waiver of broker cooperation, and then she still put it in the MLS. Well, the waiver of broker cooperation tells you don't cooperate with other brokers. And by putting it in the MLS, you are cooperating with other brokers. So she ended up getting a $1,000 fine for that. That was just silly. I don't know. So here's the waiver of broker cooperation form that I like. This is the older one that the Middlesex County MLS had. And I like this one because it's not only this part, but the bottom of this page actually has quotes out parts of the administrative code that says that we have to cooperate with each other, how soon we got to put listings in the MLS, that we need to get the owner to sign a waiver of broker cooperation if they direct us not to cooperate with other brokers, and that we need to supply a copy of this form to the any other agent who may request it if they don't believe us that we're directed not to cooperate with them. So let's go over this form right quick, okay? So this is the waiver of broker cooperation form. Licensing law requires all real estate agents, if we get a listing, it's available for us or any agent in our office to show. It must be available for other agents to show as well. We have to cooperate with them, unless the owner directs us not to cooperate. And then to prove that, we need to get the owner to sign this waiver of broker cooperation form. It's kind of like our CYA, cover your booty form, so that we don't get in trouble when we don't cooperate with other brokers. So let's see what it says. Notice that it says this in all capital letters and in bold. It's kind of like they're shouting at you. It says, I understand that cooperation amongst brokers produces wider exposure of my property and may result in it being sold or leased sooner and at a higher price than would be the case if my broker were not to cooperate with other brokers. I further understand that when my broker does cooperate with other brokers, I can still have the arrangements for the showings of the property and all negotiations with me or my attorney made only through my broker's office, should I so desire. See, that's sometimes an agent may try to dupe a seller into signing this agreement to get that secret pocket listing, and they give all kinds of cock and bull stories about why they need them to sign it. And this kind of just debunked that reasoning that they usually give. However, despite my awareness of these factors, I directed this property is to be marketed only through the efforts of the listing broker. The listing is not to be published in any multiple listing service. I will only consider offers of this property which are obtained by, and will only allow showings of this property to be conducted by, the listing broker or their duly authorized representatives, all their agents. The listing broker is hereby directed not to cooperate with any other broker. And by signing below, the parties hereto confirm that no pressure or undue influence has been exerted upon the owners as to how this property is to be marketed by the listing broker. And the owner further confirms receipt of the fully executed copy of the listing agreement. We gave them the duplicate original, and this waiver of broker cooperation at the time we signed the listing. And then we get them to sign this, date it, and we give them a copy. Now, the bottom of this form is this. This points out the part of the law or the administrative code, Title 11, Chapter 5, about how we have a responsibility to cooperate with each other. And unless directed not to do so in writing by the owner, having them sign this form, every licensee shall fully cooperate with other New Jersey licensees utilizing cooperative agreements, which shall protect and promote the interest of the licensee's client or principal. Collusion and discrimination with respect to commission rates and splits are also prohibited. So we don't violate the Sherman Antitrust Act, but also the administrative code says we're not supposed to do that either. Now, the obligation to fully cooperate with other licensees includes requirements that the listing brokers notify the MLS within 48 hours that we have a listing. Because we're supposed to put all listings in the MLS within 48 hours. That's how we share those listings. And if we get an offer in writing, those offers need to be forwarded to the owner within 24 hours. And we place no unreasonable restrictions on the showing of the property. And by by requiring them to make an appointment with the listing agency before they go to show a listing is not considered to be an unreasonable restriction on the property. All requirements imposed by this obligation to fully cooperate shall be complied with on all listings unless the client or principal, with full knowledge of all the relevant facts, expressly relieves the listing broker of one or more of those requirements in writing by having them sign this waiver of broker cooperation. Such writing shall be signed by the owner and made an attachment to the listing agreement, and such writing shall be made available for inspection by other brokers upon request. If they don't believe you, that you're just not wanting to allow them to show the property, okay, you have to show them this waiver of broker cooperation that was signed by the owner at the time you got the listing. Okay, page 19, the broker and buyer as the principal, agency relationships. So you could work with a buyer only. So more and more licensees in New Jersey are functioning as a buyer's broker. In other words, they're being retained by the buyer to help them find a suitable property. Again, these brokers and their associated salespeople are bound to specific duties to their principal. Those fiduciary duties, those legal responsibilities I've spoke of several times. Their obligations to put the principal's interest first above all others. The principal is your client. However, it still requires fair and honest dealing with other parties. We can't lie to them about problems with the house, for example. So remember the Consumer Information Statement, the CIS, that's the first document we give to anyone we intend to do business with. And it tells people right off the bat, right out the gate, who our agency is representing in this transaction and how. Now, if you're working with a buyer, there's a possibility that the buyer doesn't have to stick to working with only one agent. But would you want to work with a buyer that's going to be cheating on you?
No.
I wouldn't either. You know, I mean, we're talking about business relationships here, but the best way to kind of understand these business relationships, they're still relationships. It works the same way like personal relationships do, how people interact with each other. I mean, you wouldn't want your significant other cheating on you, right? So why would you want to work with somebody as a buyer, put all your time and effort into them, and then have them cheat on you? You'd be mad at that. So how about we start off the gate? Like if you're going to go date somebody, you're going to go out on a date. Wouldn't it make sense that the first thing that you ask them is, are you married? You know, I mean, like a simple, stupid question there, right? How about you just ask the question out, straight out, are you married, or are you dating somebody, or are you single? Well, this is the same thing. I'm going to ask a buyer when I'm working with them, are you working with any other agents at this time? Kind of seems kind of obvious, but it's a question that a lot of agents don't ask. Maybe they don't care to know because they just want you. All right. But hey, you're taking a risk when doing that, aren't you? In a relationship? Well, you're doing the same thing here. So I'm going to ask people right out the gate, are you working with any other agents right now? And if they tell me yes, I'm going to sit back in my chair and I'm going to say, then why are you here? Now, they may have a legitimate excuse. Oh, we're going through a breakup. I don't want to work with them no more because they're not listening to me. They're not responding to me. They're not doing what I'm asking of them. Okay, there's legitimate reasons. Then maybe you may consider working with that person, kind of like dating with somebody who's in a breakup, You see how if we could relate the relationships, you guys can understand how these business relationships kind of work similar. So the exclusive buyer's agency agreement, see, there's no contract that people sign with buyers that will keep them exclusive to us to prevent them from cheating on us. Now, if we have a listing, it's a little bit different. We have a listing contract. So even if they cheat on us and they work with other agents and they list the property with another company as well, they still need to pay us a commission. They're contractually bound to pay us a commission. But there is no such agreement really with buyers. Well, kind of, sort of, there is. There's something called the exclusive buyer's agency agreement. It's kind of the buyer's pledge to work exclusively with you as their agent, their buyer's agent. So you guys want to have your clients, your buyers, your potential buyer clients sign an exclusive buyer agency agreement? Would it make sense to?
I haven't seen a lot of these.
Because for some reason, agents don't get their clients to sign them. I don't know why they feel uncomfortable going over these agreements with their clients. I'm going to show it to you. Let me see. Let me see if I got one of these forms here. If not, I'm going to pull one up. Let's see. No, I don't. Okay, so I'm going to pull one up and we're going to make a video about it. So let me pull that up. So I'm going to go over with you right now the exclusive buyer's agency agreement. You could see a sample of this on page 43 as well. That's in chapter 3. But here is the exclusive buyer's agency agreement. You see, it says exclusive buyer's agency agreement here at the top. Can you guys all see this form? Just want to make sure everybody sees it. We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So this was created courtesy of New Jersey Realtors Association. You can make your own versions of this if you like. The agency, okay, so we're going to have the buyer sign here, or the buyers sign here. And then you're going to put the name of your brokerage firm here. And then the names of all the municipalities that you're going to show them properties exclusively being their agent in those municipalities here. See, New Jersey, we have so many municipalities within such a short distance, you're not going to fit them all there. So you're better off just writing the names of all the counties that you're going to work as their exclusive agent in. All right. So I would write that there, the names of all the counties, because there may be some areas that I don't work in and I won't cover. I'll write down all the counties that I'm going to work exclusively with them in. And then right here, number 2 says, does buyer have a business relationship with another broker? Yes or no? That's what I'm asking them. Are you currently seeing someone? Are you currently seeing another agent as your buyer's agent? If so, why are you here? Why are you cheating on them? All right. They may have a good reason for it, that they're going through a divorce. You know, they're breaking up with them because they're not doing what they want them to do. They're not communicating with them. They're not showing them properties they want to see. For whatever reason, they're dissatisfied with them. Now, I don't know if that agent signed one of these exclusive buyer agency agreements with their client. So at this point, I'm going to stop. I'm going to be like, okay, so you gave a good reason. So then I may be willing to work with you. So this is what we're going to do. We're gonna write up a document. We're gonna grab a blank piece of paper right now. We're gonna write up a document, and you're gonna, your agent's name. You got their contact info, their business card. If not, just you got their name. I'll look up their info, and we'll put it down on this piece of paper. And we're gonna put down your name and your contact info and all that. And we're gonna write here that today's date, and as of today, you are firing them and not going to work with their agency anymore. Okay. And then we're going to wait 3 days. You're going to write down their name, your name, you're firing them as of today. And we're going to fax this over, email it over, do whatever. You're going to send it over to them, and we're going to wait 3 business days. Okay. To make sure that that deal is now killed, that if they signed a contract with them, that contract is done. And then I could start working with you. Okay. So does the buyer have a business relationship with another broker? We're going to start off with no, because we just killed their relationship, or they just killed it by firing them. Okay. So Now we're going to deal with the declaration of business relationships. Now that we got that important question out of the way that a lot of people don't or feel uncomfortable asking and handling. So this is why a lot of agents don't simply have their clients sign it. I do, because I've come across many instances where we're having buyers that come working with an agent, setting up appointments, running them around, showing them properties. And then when they find a property they want to make an offer in, they disappear, they stop communicating. And now they're making an offer through their brother, their sister, their friend, who also has a real estate license. And I get the feeling that they told them to get another agent to run them around. And when they find a property that they'll put the offer in with them, which is totally wrong thing to do. And they're not supposed to be doing that. It's unethical. But what are you going to do about it? You know, so what I'm going to do about it is I'm not going to work with somebody like that unless they sign an exclusive buyer agency agreement, because they got screwed over too many times with that stuff. Now, the likelihood of you finding out that that is what's happening is slim, but it is possible. And if I got a contract here that was signed by you, maybe I could go after you for a commission later. Now, the declaration of the business relationship. We're going to put down here your name, the name of your brokerage, intend as of this time to work with you as and we're going to check off buyer's agent or buyer's agent only, or buyer's agent and disclose dual agent if the opportunity arises. Okay, because once again, this is a buyer's agency agreement. And then the term, I'll put down 1 year. You know, I hope to find you a house tomorrow and we get under contract by next week, but I'm going to put down 1 year, and we're going to put down the dates here. But look, it says, or 3 days after receipt by a buyer agent of a written termination notice from the buyer, whichever shall occur first. So they could fire you, wait 3 days, and now you're entitled to nothing. Unless it's a property you showed them, really. They can't just run you around and then have the other agent put in an offer. You know, it's a little bit different when they don't have anything yet that they're interested in, then firing you and then working with another agent. Okay, so the brokerage fee. Here's another reason why a lot of agents probably don't like discussing this when they talk about money. I don't know. This is a business. I like talking about money. I work. I want to earn money, and I'm not shy about talking to my clients about the money that I'm going to earn. All right. So there's a minimum I'm willing to work for. What about you? Do you guys set a minimum value on yourselves and your services?
Yes.
I mean, you may not know yet what that is, but here, I'm gonna tell you what I do. And I want you guys to answer me. What do you think? Am I being fair, or am I trying to take advantage of somebody? That on here, I'm going to put down the minimum commission that I'm willing to work for is 2%. Keep in mind, I still got to split that with my broker. Would you guys agree that I'm not trying to get rich off of one deal, and I'm not trying to take advantage of anybody asking for a minimum of 2%?
Yes.
Okay. Now keep in mind, the buyer doesn't pay that. The listing agent signs a listing agreement with the seller. That's the total commission. And that commission gets split between the buyer side and the seller side of the transaction. Right? And then each agent splits that with their broker. So commission technically gets split 4 ways. So 2%, I'm being fair. I'm not asking for a whole lot, but this is the minimum, the absolute minimum I'm willing to work for. Now, if the commission that's being offered is more than that, well, I'm going to get paid that amount. That's more. But we're stating here what the minimum commission is. So in the event the buyer wants to see a property that's not offering that minimum, they're agreeing to pay the difference. And if they don't want to agree to pay the difference, I'm going to write down here, buyer advised me not to show them properties offering the minimum commission stated above. You guys could even modify this form and have that as a checkbox with an initial or signature next to it to have them sign that. Okay. And there's a reason to do that. It's an important reason. he could actually save you from a discrimination lawsuit. Yeah, I know you're thinking, wait, discrimination? What are you talking about? We're talking about money. Bear with me. So a lot of agents may show you properties, and when they discuss with you what your criteria are, what you're looking for in a house, what are your must-haves, you know, how many bedrooms, how many baths, is there anything that you don't want in a house? What do you like in a house? So agents search this database, where are the areas you're looking and all that. A lot of times their eyes drift over to the commission that's being offered and how much it's being offered. And if it's not a lot of commission, sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm going to filter that out. I ain't wasting my time showing them that one. It ain't a lot of money. And you may never even know that they filtered it out. Now, they're not supposed to do that, because what they're actually doing then is, whose interest are they putting first if they're doing that?
Your own.
You're putting your own interest, not your clients. And you're supposed to put your client's interest above all others, including your own. So an agent is not doing that when they are filtering out properties like that. However, if I had a conversation with my client about the minimum commission I'm willing to work for, and that they either agreed to pay the difference, and then it doesn't matter to me which property I show them because they're going to make up the difference, or they would advise me not to show them the properties paying that lower commission amount. They say just filter them out, which is why I would write down here at the bottom, buyer advised me not to show them the properties that are not offering the minimum commission as stated above. Okay. And then I'll have them initial or sign next to that, so that I have my proof now. So if it ever comes up later on as a question or an argument that I'm filtering out the properties I'm showing them, well, yeah, but you told me to, because you didn't want to pay the difference in the commission, remember? So you said, just don't show them to you. Now, I'll tell buyers there's a good reason why you should not see those properties. You know, it's not just because I don't believe that a buyer should pay that commission out of their pocket. It should be coming out of the seller's end. The buyer should not be paying that. Okay. And a seller who is not willing to pay a minimum of 2% commission, that is cheap. For an agent to try to incentivize buyers to come in and show your house and start a contract on it, you know, that's cheap. And if a buyer is that if a seller is that cheap to not want to offer 2% to incentivize agents to bring in their buyers to see your property and go under contract, how cheap do you think they're going to be when it comes time that you get the home inspections and you find stuff is messed up? Do you think that they're going to volunteer to fix it, or fix it right, or give you money so that you could fix it by reducing the price or something? Probably not. They'll probably do a half-assed job. If they do agree to fix it, you're going to have problems with them, if they even agree to fix it at all. So I would suggest just avoiding them altogether, because that's probably a problem seller to deal with as a buyer. Okay. And in my experience, that's actually been true. So now it's up to the buyer to decide what they want to do. Now, I don't care what they want to do, because they're either going to pay me the difference, or I'm not going to show them those properties, one or the other. But I discussed it and I had the conversation. I'm not just putting my interest above theirs without having that conversation with them. I'm having the conversation that some agents find painful, so they just don't have it, and they hope everything works out great in the end. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not wasting my time or my aggravation going to get built up with that kind of drama. Instead, I'm going to have this conversation with them. Somebody here said, "Yo, I never seen an agent give this out before. You never heard of this form before." I wonder why. A lot of agents should discuss this. They should go over this with you. But most of them.
signed that one.
What's that?
I signed that one.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
Good. Good.
We both are the salesperson that I work with.
Yeah, that's good. Your agent did the right thing there. You know, wonder if they were one of my students.
Who knows?
I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time. They may be. I don't know. Because you've seen the majority of agents do not. I don't understand why. They should be. Was this a hard discussion to have the way I just had it? You know, and if the buyer refuses to pay the difference and they still want me to show them those properties, I'm going to tell them, listen, there's a minimum value that I'm willing to work for. I mean, are you willing to work below minimum wage? I mean, neither am I. You know, I got to split this commission with my broker still. And I lay out a lot of money. I put in my time, my effort. I have insurance I'm paying for errors and emissions insurance. I have the MLS fees and dues and all this stuff. There's a lot of expenses that I put out up front before I ever see a penny. I mean, I'm driving you around, showing you property, spending money on gas. I got insurance on my car. There's a lot of expenses that I put out here working with you as a buyer up front with no promise of ever getting paid. So there's a minimum I'm willing to work for. The juice got to be worth the squeeze for me. By the way, that's a measurement by which I measure all things by. Is the juice worth the squeeze? I always ask myself that question. So that's pretty much it for this form. And then if you're working as a dual agent, they explain what dual agency is. And then you would also get them to sign a informed consent to dual agency agreement at this time. You ask them, listen, you think you may want to see one of our company's listings? If so, our agency is already representing the seller, but we'd also be representing you. Not necessarily me that I'm working with the seller, but our company is. Could be another agent within our agency. But it's still dual agency. Our agency, the company, is representing both parties in the transaction. So we need to disclose that to you, and we need your permission for that. So if you don't give us permission to work with you as a dual agent, disclosing that to you, you have to still give us that implicit permission. I can still show you those properties, but I'd be working with you as a transaction broker, and I won't be representing you then. Okay, so that's the difference. And then that's it. That's all it's to this form. It's not that difficult to go over, right? And a copy of this is in our shared Google Drive. It's called the Exclusive Buyer Agency Agreement. You also have it there on page 43 in the book. Okay. Now, brokerage and disclosed dual agency agreements. We already went over, and I showed you dual agency agreements. There's a sample one on page 51. There's 4 versions of this form. The sample of one that is in the book is for the seller, I believe, not the buyer's one. There's one for a seller. There's one for a buyer. There's one for a tenant. There's one for a landlord. Okay. And then transaction brokers, it is suggested, there is no standard form that's a transaction broker agreement form, but the Real Estate Commission suggests that any agent that's going to be working as a transaction broker should have some sort of a contract with that seller or buyer explaining what exactly they're going to be doing in exchange for those fees that they're earning. Okay, because remember, a transaction broker, they're not functioning as an agent. They may be doing the same things that an agent does, but they don't have any fiduciary duties to them that they owe them. So they should have some sort of an agreement in writing explaining what exactly it is that is expected of them to do in exchange for the fees that they're going to be earning. Okay. So let's go over these business relationships again. And these are the relationships that we went over on the CIS form. You have a seller's agent who only works with and represents the seller. The agency is only representing the seller, not you necessarily as an individual. Exclusive listing agreements ensure the owner is working only with our agency to market their property. Any agency can still show it unless the owner directs us not to, and then we need to get them to sign that waiver of broker cooperation agreement. A buyer's agent, the agency only represents the buyer. And it is a good idea to get them to sign one of these exclusive buyer agency agreement forms. which by the way, I have a custom one that I use that I put in that checkbox and I put in that statement that, seller advised me not to show them properties paying the minimum commission as stated above. Because I didn't get into that part yet. Here, how about let me show you this. I have to open up something here on my computer. Give me a second. So I told you guys when we fill out that exclusive buyer's agency agreement form, how it could also prevent us from getting accused of discrimination. It could save us from a discrimination lawsuit. Now, I was only talking really about money there, and it's if somebody's working with one agent or not. So where does discrimination come in? Well, if I'm only selecting properties for, based on the amount of commission that's being offered, if I did not have that open conversation with the buyer, and they advise me not to show them those properties, and I'm just doing it on my own, filtering them out because I'm putting my own best interest ahead of theirs by just looking at the money amounts. So let's take a look at this whiteboard here for a second. If move my Zoom controls out of the way, sorry. Okay, so if there's a bunch of properties in an area, okay, we got a bunch of properties here. Oh, let me get a thicker tool here. We got a bunch of properties here in the area that meet the client's criteria. So I'm showing them these properties over here, right? But there's also properties over here. Like if we were to look and put on the map all the properties that met their criteria, and let's just say that it turns out that I was showing them all these properties because they paid enough commission. But these properties met their criteria too, but I did not show it to them. I didn't show them these properties because the dollar amount was not sufficient enough for me. Here, let's make that green. Let's say the dollar amount was not sufficient enough for my liking. Okay. And I never had the conversation though about that money. And they told me not to show them those properties based on the commission because they don't want to pay the difference. I just didn't show them the properties on my own. If they found out that there's properties that met their criteria that I was not showing them, and they drew it on a map like this, and they could see, well, I showed them all these properties, but these properties met their criteria too, but I didn't show it to them. And you could see, well, they're all on that side of town, and these properties are on that side of town. Could they make a case to a jury that I was steering them in this direction and away from this area? Why was I not showing them properties over here in this area? Could they make a case that I was discriminating and steering them away from that area simply by not letting them know that properties were available that met their criteria that they were looking for?
Yes.
Well, that term steering is actually in the law, and it is considered discrimination. If you tell people, I think you'd like it better over here. I think you'd be more suited in this neighborhood. It's better for you. When you're the one who's making the decision or limiting their options of where they could live or trying to steer them in one direction away from another, regardless of your reasoning behind it, you're guilty of discrimination. And under federal law, that's a discriminatory act. So if you're steering them into a different neighborhood, which is not what you were doing, but they could paint the picture that clearly shows that to a jury. The jury will be like, yeah, that agent, they were steering them away. Yep, that's discrimination. They were discriminating. Yep, Boom, you're guilty of discrimination now. You could lose your license, you could get sued, you could get all kinds of fines, and it's a nightmare. But if you sign that exclusive buyer's agency agreement with your buyer, and you had that conversation with them, and they told you not to show properties that were not offering that minimum commission stated above. And we're in this situation where it just so happens that those ones that were not offering that commission amount were all in one specific area, which is that's kind of unlikely, but it is possible. And if that does happen, I'm not going to get guilty of discrimination because I got a contract that you said don't show me these properties that are not offering the commission stated above. And I could show that each one of these properties were not offering that commission. You ain't getting me on discrimination. See how I just saved you from a discrimination lawsuit simply by having the conversation and signing that exclusive buyer's agency agreement with a buyer? Now, the likelihood of that happening is slim, but it's a possibility, and it's not one that I like to take, right? I don't take those kinds of chances. Well, at least I try not to, right? So close that out. And that's how filling out the exclusive buyer's agency agreement can help protect you from a discrimination lawsuit. All right, so let's get back to our form here. So as a buyer's agent, you should have them sign that exclusive buyer's agency agreement. And what I do additionally in my custom exclusive buyer agency agreement, I created one before the New Jersey Realtors did. I created one that also included the disclosures that are required if we give buyers rebates. Okay, so there's certain disclosures we need to give to buyers if we're offering them rebates. We need to inform them at the beginning of the relationship that we're offering a rebate, how much that rebate's going to be, and advise them to consult with a tax professional about the possible consequences of receiving the rebate that they may have to pay taxes on. Okay, so and also the possibility that we need to let everybody in the transaction know that we're offering a rebate and that the lender can say no, their lender can deny it. But as of now, we're trying to offer you a rebate. Okay, so I include that in my exclusive buyer agency agreement form for those who I am giving rebates to. All right. Then we have that disclosed dual agency agreement. You have to have both parties, the contracts, sign them. They're not going to be signing the same one, though. There's one that only the buyer signed. There's one that only the seller signed. And when I say buyer or seller, that is also meant to encompass tenant and landlord as well. It must be with the knowledge of all parties that you're working and representing both parties in the transaction, and they give you that implicit permission to work in that way. There's nothing wrong with working as a dual agent. Disclosed dual agency is perfectly fine. Undisclosed dual agency is where it becomes a problem. Undisclosed dual agency is illegal. And then lastly, there's nothing in the law that says you need to work as an agent. You can work as a transaction broker, which is merely the manager of a transaction. They do all the things that an agent does. They put the parties together. They help them find a house or try to market their property. They just don't owe those legal responsibilities we call fiduciary duties to the one that they're working with. And if you're working with somebody as their agent, buyer's agent, seller's agent, or disclosed dual agent, the one that you're working with, the principal, is also referred to as your client. If you're working as a transaction broker, they're a customer. So what's the difference between a client and a customer? Clients you owe fiduciary duties to, those legal responsibilities. Customers, you do not. You just need to treat them fairly and honestly. All right. So here's some of the forms that we've gone over or that we still need to go over. We've gone over the CIS form. That's the Consumer Information Statement. What is its purpose? It's a disclosure of agency relationships. When do you give it and who do you give it to? You give it to anyone you intend to do business with. It's not required for commercial real estate or short-term listings, or short-term rentals. The informed consent to dual agency, that needs to be signed by all parties in a transaction if you're working as a dual agent. The opinion 26 notice needs to be on the cover page of any contract that we as licensees prepare, that informs people that they have the right to hire a lawyer. Remember that one? The Attorney General's memorandum, even though we didn't look at this form yet or go over it yet, we're going to go over that in Chapter 4. I did explain it, that the Attorney General is the highest law enforcement officer in the state. And the memorandum that's coming from them must be given to property owners at the time we get a listing that advises them that they cannot discriminate. They need to follow both state and federal laws, the anti-discriminatory laws. And here's one that we did not even discuss yet, the lead hazard addendum, which we'll go over in other chapters too. The lead hazard addendum is a document that needs to be filled out by the owner of a property anytime we get a listing, where if the property was built prior to 1978, they need to disclose any known lead hazard on the property, any lead paint or lead hazard on the property, or any inspection reports that they have pertaining to lead on the property. That's a federal requirement. That's a federal law. And then we must give the lead hazard booklet that informs the consumer, the buyers or renters about the dangers of lead, and give them a 10-day opportunity to conduct an inspection or waive that inspection if they wish to close on the transaction any sooner. However, some new laws went into effect here in New Jersey, that New Jersey is not to be outdone by any federal laws. So, of course, our politicians created their own lead laws now that require the property owner inspect their property for lead and get it certified as lead-free. And they got to do these inspections periodically still, even if they get it certified lead-free. So we're going to go over that in a later chapter too. Moving on. So we have that exclusive buyer's agency agreement that we went over. It helps establish our agency relationship with a buyer. It discusses the duties that we owe the buyer and the client's fiduciary responsibilities, our fiduciary responsibilities to them and what we expect of them to be loyal to us. It helps establish evidence in the event that there's a dispute between two buyer's agents. So if another agent sent you to me to show you properties and then they write up the contract, if I find out about it somehow, I immediately file what's known as a procuring cause complaint against that other agent. It's against the licensing law for an agent to solicit the business of another agent. It's also a violation of the realtor's code of ethics to do so. Now, with listings, it's easy to know if this is happening. With buyers, it's not so cut and dry. You know, if you're not happy with working with somebody, you can go work with somebody else. And there's no listing agreements. But if you had an exclusive buyer's agency agreement signed with them, you have some evidence that can help support your case that you're owed the commission. However, just simply having the exclusive buyer agency agreement does not make it that you are automatically the one who's owed the commission, because it's a little more involved than that. When you file a procuring cause complaint against another agent, the procuring cause is the one who made the sale happen. They're the ones that did the most work leading up to the sale, and therefore they're the one that's owed the commission. So if I'm the one that set up the appointments, ran you around, showed you properties, got you approved for mortgages, all that stuff, and then next thing you know, another agent steps in, puts an offer in on a property for you, and I find out about it right away, I file a complaint, I am the procuring cause. I'm the one that's owed the commission. But the more work that that other agent does, the less I become the procuring cause, the more they become the procuring cause, because they did more work. So the longer before I find out about it and the more work that they do in that transaction, the less I become the procuring cause. So it's not just a matter of who had the exclusive buyer's agency agreement signed, but also who did the most work. So it's not so clear. You have to, when you find out about it, you have to immediately file a complaint. Now, who do you file the complaint with? You don't file it with the real estate commission. What is the purpose of the real estate commission? Well, they enforce real estate laws, right? To protect the public from unscrupulous brokers and salespeople. They're not there to mediate arguments among bickering agents about commissions. That's what the Realtors Association is for. So our Realtor Association has this procuring cause panel of brokers that act like judges. They took courses, they learned how to mediate these cases and to examine them like a judge. And they have these panel of long-term brokers that were brokers for a long time. They heard it all before. They worked in the business for a long time. They listen to the arguments from both sides. They examine the evidence that both sides bring about, and then they render a decision as to who's owed the commission, which is not so easy to do. Okay, so it provides evidence to protect the buyer. So the exclusive buyer's agency agreement does provide evidence to protect the buyer's agents against claims of discrimination by steering clients, limiting the property shown based on the commissions, which may be lower than the amount the agent's willing to work for. That's that map I showed you, if you were able to draw it on a map. And this would protect you from that kind of a discrimination claim. As far as the procuring cause complaint goes, when those two agents are in dispute about the commission, the one who could prove that they did the most work leading up to the sale, difficult to prove, would be the one who was owed the commission because they procured the sale. They were the cause of the sale. And that complaint is filed with the local Realtors Association, not the Real Estate Commission. Okay? So you do need to know for exams what or who is a procuring cause. It's the agent who did the most work leading up to the sale, and therefore they're owed the commission. And if you had an exclusive buyer agency agreement in place, it helps start your evidence there in the event that there ever is such a situation where you have a procuring cause complaint. Okay?